a policy is just a direction, first of all, and it's actually to practically implement some of the commitments Nigeria has made at international and regional level. And although the Nigerian National Gender Policy says 35% affirmative action, we know in reality this is not the case when you look at the representation of women, whether it's at local government, at state level, and as well as national level. And the reason for this is due to so many reasons, but the main reason is due to lack of political will and inability of political parties to incorporate affirmative action right at the party level in order to ensure that qualified women in their various constituencies can vie for political office. Going beyond this, the federal government has the obligation to actually ensure that this is implemented at state and local level. So it's also about ensuring that you can follow through what has been declared at national level at all levels of governance in Nigeria.
Actually, in our country today, we're still having that problem of actualizing the 35% affirmative. Reasons being that in our country, I think our men are still timid. Why I said they are timid is that they feel threatened that when the women come to power, they are going to assist them. But it's not going to be like that. You find that in many departments, parastatals, ministers, when you give a woman a job to do, she does it perfectly well, and they are always outstanding. So the main problem hindering us is that men are feeling threatened over this. Men are feeling threatened over it. And based on that, they don't want women to come up. They always like to use the money they have. They always like to use the power, the strength, because they know in numerical strength, they are great. They are more than us in decision-making areas. Like in the parties, they are more. They are the party chairman, they are the secretary, they are the only thing, the most positive position we occupy there is the woman leader. So the only way out is for us women to gang ourselves, hold ourselves, come together, forget about party affiliative. Forget about party affiliative. Talk about a woman. What can a woman do? How can a woman deliver? Then we can be able to achieve that.
You know, that's a very interesting question to ask because we didn't start badly. If you look back to the colonial period, many of the spectacular moments and inspirational moments in the anti-colonial fight were led by women. And so people will remember the Aba women's agitation. You know, people call them Aba women's riots. It was actually an agitation. It was a sustained agitation. It wasn't just an event, and it wasn't, it wasn't a riot. It's the colonialists that describe it as a riot, right? Or the Egba women, the Lokuta women led by Fumi Ransom Kuti, who sacked the Alake of Egbaland. Yes? Obademola. Now, and what did they protest against? They protested against taxes, unfair taxes, the unfair incidence of tax burdens. And indeed, if you go back to the water riots in Lagos in 1908-09, women also played a very significant role. Now, from that era, at independence, you had quite a good number of formidable women. Margaret Ekpo in the East, for instance, Fumi Ransom Kuti in the West, Gambo Sawaba in the North, and people like that. How now, if you go from there, where we were in those times, to where you are now, and you had people like Flora Mapa in literature, for instance, and culture, yes? Julie Coker later in broadcasting. So we had women with stature in the Nigerian public space. And then we move from there to the elimination of women with stature in the public space, women who came with authority in their own right. And then with the military, we moved from that to the appendagization of women. First lady, first daughter, first mistress, first this and first that. And so that the authority of the woman moved not from her achievement or her aspirations or her leadership skills to whom she slept with and where she slept and the propinquity of the pillow.
I will say no. No. And that no, the whole blame wouldn't go to men. I want you to mark it. It wouldn't go to men, the whole blame. Because most of the time, we say we are being marginalized. And most of the time, women marginalize themselves. Doesn't she know that she's a woman? She should go and sit down. When men are talking, she wants to come out and talk. A woman saying this, so not a man saying it. So the problem with the society has not been fair to us, and the problem, the reason, one, our culture, some of our cultures that have this belief that women should be, yes, we should be under our men, but not that we don't have brain to contribute, because when the society is bad, it's bad for all of us. And we bear the pain more because we take care of the children. When your child is not eating, feeding well, can't go to school, you can't even take care of your child, it will pain the woman more than the man. So it has not been fair. The society has not been, the government too, they have not been fair to us.
She go say market woman na woman. She go say I be lady. She go say market woman na woman. She go say I be lady. She go say market woman na woman. She go say I be lady. She go say.
Well, I think despite the setbacks women have had in the political climate, in terms of other aspects of livelihood, economic livelihood, in the development sector that you mentioned, even in the civil service, in the military, the armed forces and the rest of them, women have started making some progress. And a lot of women have broken the glass ceiling, even in places where we never thought of. I mean, there was a time for decades and ages, only men occupied the position of Minister of Finance, even Minister of Petroleum Resources. But the brass ceiling or the glass ceiling, whatever we call it, has been broken, in some sectors. Affirmative action just ensures a foot in the door for marginalized groups to have a voice. Now, when you get that foot in the door, you probably get invited to sit at the table, and then you begin to take decisions with those on the table. We need to take affirmative action seriously. Economies and countries that have done very well in terms of women's representation have started from affirmative action. I know a lot of people have reservations, it has to be merit, but you hear all these things come up when it has to do with women. We do affirmative action every day. We do it with the Federal Character Commission. You have people saying, this man, the governor has to nominate this person from the 3 different senatorial districts or from the constituencies. So in one form, affirmative action is being practiced, but just favoring a certain gender, and that's just men. But if we want to really achieve equality, we will be looking at not just federal character, but a gender and equal opportunity character. I have always advocated for a Gender and Equal Opportunities Commission to replace a Federal Character Commission. That way, you're looking at both men and women and people from different ethnic groups, whether minorities or majorities, being represented in governance. So taking affirmative action a top notch beyond thinking that just favors women alone, it also favors marginalized groups. It also favors young people. It also favors persons with disability and provides a level playing field. If political parties, if decision-making positions are earmarked specific, and countries that have done it, like Senegal, I was in Senegal recently, and they've done it. You cannot submit lists of candidates for a position without having a minimum of, I think they've even gone beyond 35. They started doing what we call the twinning formula, which means that if a male is the head of that party or the presidential candidate, the vice presidential candidate has to be female, and they've gone beyond that. So we need to think about such strategies, and only when we make such informed decisions, such intentional decisions, rather than just mouthing affirmative action as the rhetoric, that's when we'll move forward.
She go dance the fire dance. She know him man a master. She go cook for him. She go do anything he say. But lady not be so.
There are multiple ways. I started with political parties playing a role, national leadership playing a role. We've got to address the economic space, because that's one of the worst disincentives. The fact that women are economically excluded and also excluded from the civic space. So we've got to make sure that women have greater access to citizenship, effective citizenship, through documentation, through access to education, through access to healthcare. At the moment, women are still paying a steep price in maternal mortality. And maternal mortality levels are just unacceptable. It's, I believe, somewhere in the region of just under 600 per 100,000 live births. In a place like the Northeast, it's nearly 1,700 per 100,000 live births. That's a heck of a lot of deaths. Okay? And when women are dying or getting injured, like through VVF in childbirth, or not having access to recourse and remedies for the epidemic of rape we have in the country, it becomes of domestic violence. It becomes difficult to expect the same women who have been damaged in this way to all of a sudden become ministers and presidents and vice presidents and governors and permanent secretaries in the law.
So the best encouragement is, like my party have started, giving them almost free ticket, then helping them mobilize their fellow women. Like in my party here, I have a senatorial candidate, the Olu senatorial zone. It's been handled by a woman by name Dr. Uche Onyoma Ibe. She's our candidate for Olu senatorial zone. We are encouraging her to come up with more women organizations, go to churches where women are women leaders and all these things. Bring out your fellow women, talk to them, and she's doing wonderfully well. And I'm here telling you that the next senator law we get will be a woman.
Women's exclusion is social, is cultural, and is inimical in the environment that we are in. Even if you're the richest woman in Nigeria, and to stand for office, you still have those challenges. Because it's not about the resources right now, it's about the willingness for people to accept women as leaders, and about the machinery to actually support the emergence of women. At the same time, women who have earned their income in business, in other spheres of economic endeavors, should also be encouraged to invest in pools to support candidates who are interested in vying for office. That could also go a long way in actually ensuring more emergence of women, as well as support for these women, because women are coming out, but when they do come out, what are the results? And we need to take this beyond just the communities. The political parties have a very important role to play in terms of how women emerge. So the resources are there, but even if the woman owns those resources and the structures in country, in the environment where she is, does not support women, we will still be back to the same issues. So it's about political will, and it's about correcting the attitude that women are not effective when they get into political office, and primarily about ensuring that the rights of women, the right for them to participate in leadership, is protected by the state. by instituting affirmative action as one of the means of securing women's representation in our country.
I used to be of the school of thought that you didn't need money to run elections, but I changed my mind a few years ago when I directly worked with women politicians. You need money to run for office. You need money to call town hall meetings. You need water for the people who come for your town hall meetings. You need a venue. You need transportation. You need money to print banners, flyers. You need money to run adverts and the rest of them. So politics costs money. Maybe the aspect of like actually putting money into the hands of the voters to influence them, yes, women cannot participate in that because it's wrong, both for men and women. But even the nitty-gritty of running an effective and efficient campaign, meeting your constituency, picking up the forms in your party to even show your intention to run for office, setting up a campaign office, all these things cost money. A friend of mine and my predecessor, Aisha Osori in the Women Trust Fund, spent for what she could document and what came in as donations from friends, not less than 11 million naira for election, just for, I think, the House of Reps representing Abuja. Now, how many women have the economic power to run for office in Nigeria? Yes, poverty is directly linked to women's inability to run for office. A lot of women cannot pick the presidential forms for APC or PDP. A lot of women don't even have campaign offices, and because in terms of per capita income, in terms of financing and all that, women, not many women have the opportunity to be, to be able to afford to run politics as they should ordinarily. So there has to be some deliberate attempt from, or a reform, electoral reform or something that makes politics less expensive. Right now, politics is the forte of the rich and the powerful. You need a lot of money to run for office. And even the rural woman who has what it takes to lead a community, even a ward, cannot run an effective campaign in Nigeria without at least 10 million naira. And that's a lot. Some people, how many people earn up to 10 million in a year? Fundraising and crowdsourcing is not a strategy that we have, used very well efficiently or explored efficiently. So, and I still believe there are so many ways to mobilize resources for women to run for office.
You see, I'm going to give you a typical example now. When I was discussing with the governor of the state before the councillorship election, I was among the traditional rulers that said, I would want my councillor to be a woman. And today, the councillor of this woman autonomous community is a woman. When I was telling the governor that I would want a woman to be a candidate, he said, Your Highness, how do you mean? I said, I believe a woman will serve us better. He said, how? I said, because one, they will respect constituted authority. 90% of women must respect constituted authority. Accountability, they will give. The answer to this equation is that now I have a woman councillor in my community. I'm also talking to some people to go and contest maybe the House of Assembly, but what they told me was the cost of funds. There is no fund that is below 2 million for House of Assembly. So a lot of people spent close to 500,000 for this councillorship bid. So that comes back to talk of poverty.
Yes, there have been women groups that come for my endorsement, and then the rest of them I do. I do endorse them. That's one other area, one way I know I can personally, as an institution, encourage them. Because what is happening now is a total injustice to the women folk. Many a times, the politicians, after using them, dump them. Even convert so many of them to servitudes. You know it, it's what happens. Bogus promises during electioneering campaign, they put their lives in harm's way. The day they are elected, these women are abandoned. It is not good. Each time a courageous woman comes for my endorsement, I don't relent in doing that. I don't hesitate in doing that because I tend to believe that they will make as good administrators, if not even better, than their men folk. Taking example, taking cue from other countries, civilized countries that have put that into practice. It paid off. It yielded a lot of dividends.
I know we can work our way through it. We can constantly push back against patriarchal structures. We can constantly attempt to change the narrative as we are now with proposing we need affirmative action. We need political parties to implement their affirmative action policies. We need the Nigerian gender policy of 2006 talks about affirmative action. The federal government needs to begin to address it and deal with it. We need it to trickle down. Yes, we have good policy. Nigeria has always had good policies. We have fantastic policies. But what are we doing with them? And until we begin to address these structures, nothing is going to change. And the men have to stop thinking that when we talk about affirmative action is because we don't want them there. No, we want everybody to have equal opportunity and equal access. And the way things are geared and skewed right now, women have no access. The last elections, 2015, we lost so many women who were already in parliament at different levels. We literally went down to 1999 times and numbers. That's a disgrace. The economy is failing. The Southeast is landlocked. There are a lot of factors. Do you understand me? It's just there's no money coming in. People are doing all sorts of things, and the biggest people to suffer are young women, because the first thing they start doing is sex in exchange for anything, food, feeding their family, all sorts of things, because there's nothing else to do. My biggest irritant is that Nigerian men think women want to take over. No, women don't want to take over. They just want some access to be able to govern, because men have been ruling and we still don't have decent primary health care facilities. We still don't have, market women are farmers. They are farming and their produce is rotting because there's no proper transportation system to get from point A to point B for them to sell and make money. We have a complete failure of the educational sector. Everybody thinks they want to set up a private school rather than funding properly the public schools that are there so that everybody can have access to it. And so there are all these other things. So I'm hoping that affirmative action will allow or create the space for women to be better leaders than the current leadership we have. But we also need to make demands on the political parties to implement 35% affirmative action. Each of the political parties, the major ones, APC and PDP, and some of the smaller ones, APGA and the others, do have statements of intent around gender and gender issues. We need to make sure that INEC takes a microscope to find out or ensure that they're fulfilling the terms of those agreements, because sometimes they're so busy doing other things they forget gender. It's one thing to call a meeting and say you're doing a gender meeting around don't do any more gender meetings. We've had enough of that. Look at what the political parties are doing around gender. Are they fulfilling the terms of their intent, what their mandate says around gender? Because each of the major political parties has a paragraph or so, or a policy on gender. And these are things that INEC needs to be looking at, since it's the supervisory agency for these processes.
My name is Chidi Ansel Odinkalo. I seek and I endorse 50% affirmative action for women in Nigeria.
I, Ikechukwu Cyril Akujobi, the state chairman of Labour Party, Imo State, endorses that 35% affirmative for women participation in politics and in everywhere.
Okay, I, Olufunke Barua, endorse 35% affirmative action. I believe that women and other marginalized groups should be given an opportunity to enter the political space. Thank you.
I, Honorable Ifeyinwa Obinabo, hereby endorse 50% affirmative action for women. Thank you so much.
I, Ezinne Ngozi Oji, hereby endorse the 35% affirmative position for women in Nigeria.
I, His Royal Highness, Eze Dr. G.I. Ejimogu, and one of Umanum Autonomous Community, willingly endorse 35% affirmation to women in politics.
35% affirmative policy, affirmative action, I hereby endorse, uphold it, and will continue to respect it as an institution and as an individual in Nigeria too.
I, Osai Ojigo, endorse minimum 35% affirmative action for women in Nigeria.